So thank you all for coming. There is snacks in the back, thanks to the library, who has also generously given us this space. I want to thank the Associate Vice President for Academic Affairs, Department of Modern Languages, Literature, and Cultures, International Relations, which now I'm also in charge of. Let's see, who else? Campus Ministry, thank you for your support. Alana Student Center, LASAF, where's there we are. I mean, you didn't give me money, but whatever.
You're here.
So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Dr. Richard Reisbach. I am the founder of the Borders and Migrations Initiative, of which this is one of our talks, our second for this semester. I'm also Dean of Inclusion and Engagement and Chair of, International Relations. And give me a job, give me a title, don't give me more money. We are here, and I know you're used to me dressing up much more fly, I get that, but I'm here because, representing Kena Border Initiative, this is what we're going to talk about today. I did have this lovely introduction. I couldn't print it out today, and I tried 5 different computers and printers, so cool. So I'm just winging this. So here we have with us colleagues of mine from Xavier University, Diane Cherry-DeFrancesco and Olivia Dunn, who conducted a research project that also involved a art exhibit, photography exhibit, which we have on display in our art gallery just across the room here. It'll be up for a month, so please take a chance to look at those things. And they're going to talk about fleeing, waiting, hoping families at the border. And they're going to talk a little bit about the genesis of the project, what happened, then we can open it up for Q&A. Okay, so thank you all for coming. Thank you for driving all the way up here from Cincinnati. And I'll let you take over.
Richard, thank you so much for inviting us. Thank you for coming, everyone. We're so excited to be here and share about our project. And just to note from the very beginning, we have a colleague who couldn't be with us and that was very instrumental in various parts of our project. So her name is Jen Gibson, and she's Associate Professor of Psychology at Xavier University. As Richard said, I'm Diane. I'm a professor of Spanish and wear lots of hats at Xavier as well. And my colleague Leah Dunn, Associate Professor of Occupational Therapy. So we're really proud to be here and share with you. We're also proud to say that we worked on this as an interdisciplinary team, and it was really exciting to be able to share our expertise in various areas and work together on this project. So background, we at Xavier, thank you. We have a parish on campus, Bellarmine Parish, and they have been consistently participating with Kena Border Initiative, offering immersions to parishioners. And the last time that we just came back, but the previous group went on the immersion prior to the pandemic. And that included faculty, students, and parishioners. So it was a mixed group, which was really nice. We were on that immersion, and all of us noticed, especially faculty, it's like, we should write a grant, we should come back, we should do some interviews, we should really examine some of the issues that we observed that were taking place during, at the border. So we wrote a grant through an internal grant called Women of Excellence. We were awarded the grant. However, when we got the award, we were so excited, but then the pandemic was upon us. So we could not travel, we could not collect data. So when we moved into a post-COVID phase, Xavier was heading back to campus, but that summer before, that was the summer of 2021, we still were not able to take any students abroad. We were being very cautious on campus. Our original plan was to involve students in the data collection phase and the 3 sort of arms of our project. So we weren't able to take students, so you will see in the next photo we have our research team, and we took alums with us. Also, just to sort of give you a little bit of a background on the internal review board, it was an international research project, and we worked with vulnerable populations. So we had several phases to that internal review board process. We had the support of the Jesuit University in Torreón, the Iberoamericana, Universidad Iberoamericana, who supported us as far as our international partner so that we could proceed with the research because it was taking place in Mexico. You see our research team. It consisted of Leah and myself, and then our three alums, Laura Nolan in occupational therapy, Maria Fraulini, a middle school Spanish teacher in Cincinnati who had graduated from our licensure program, and Philip Dunn, one of my amazing Spanish students who's multilingual, and he came along as an interpreter for the filming of the documentary. So he was the main interviewee for the documentary, as well as we couldn't take any videography students, so we took my son Vincent DiFrancesco, who was a student at the time at DePaul University studying videography and documentary film. So next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we had sort of three arms to our project. One was producing this documentary film, and then the second was the research project. We hoped to interview, and Leah's going to talk about exactly how we carried out our methodology, but we wanted to interview migrants. At the same time, we also noticed when we went in with our Bellarmine group that there was a need for just, interacting with children, providing some activities, some hands-on activities. So we brought our occupational therapist and our Spanish language educator so that children could be involved in a child-friendly space and do crafts, songs, listen to stories, be with other children. And so our Xavier team provided opportunities for students to draw, color, and create. And while they waited outside of Kino Border Initiative, outside the building for their appointments, or they waited in line to be served food, the children often had nothing to do, so instead we were able to engage them with bubbles, sidewalk chalk, all kinds of activities, and the parents played too. So next slide. So to situate us, what was taking place in summer 2021, we were still at a point where Title 42 was, was part of our administration's immigration policy. So at Kino Border Initiative, what did that mean? That meant that, and what did that mean at the border? That meant that very, very few, nobody could present an asylum case at a port of entry. There were a few families that through the Florence Project at Kino Border Initiative, they were able to become accepted to actually present for asylum. There were very few cases, but there were a few. So what happened at the facility itself, they served meals mostly to go, so there were long lines outside the building, people wearing masks. Everyone came with their Tupperware containers to be able to take food to go. Newly arrived families were permitted to come into the facility with masks. They were served a meal, they took a shower, they were given clean clothes, and then their story was documented. They were also offered legal information and could make appointments to meet with a social worker psychologist. So now on to the project, Leah.
So I'm going to talk specifically about the research that we did from our parishioner immersion, what we call it, a parishioner immersion experience. We really, there was several educators, our psychologist, Diane, myself as an occupational therapist, and we're just like seeing major issues, right? Major issues, nothing to do, kids had nothing to do, people just wait in line. And if you have nothing to do, that is what occupation is, what you do from the time you get up to the time you get up again. It's what gives you meaning and gives you an identity in life. And that is, now I'm biased, but that is kind of the humanitarian crisis. What do people do with their time? And it's not a lack of wanting to do something, it's just they can't. So our project was a qualitative descriptive study. We really wanted to see what is the experience while these people are waiting for months, for weeks, when they're not in their home country or home state in Mexico. The kids are not enrolled in school because they're not a resident of that particular state. They're always with their kids. They're doing this, these occupations of survival, just food, food, shelter. That's basically what they're doing. So we wanted to do a couple of things. So we used photos. We gave each participant, we had a couple of digital photos, cameras, not photographers, but cameras. And we would, as we recruited, we would ask them, just take pictures of you and your family. We didn't want them to take pictures of anybody else without permission, and just to show us what you're doing as you wait. Okay, and then they brought those back in and we conducted an interview. So the photos is particularly useful as an application with vulnerable populations because it grants agency. They're the ones that's choosing the data for us to study. And it also helps with to be more culturally sensitive from a researcher's standpoint. Our interviewing was in Spanish. Diane conducted the interviews. I was the observer. My very little Spanish, but I understand nonverbals very well. So seeing some of the trauma and the desperation of our participants was heartbreaking, but I was able to add some field notes and some more richness to our data. So as we interviewed them, I had printed out all their photos. So when we recruited, I'm probably getting ahead of myself. We recruited, I printed out the photos. They kept the photos. I did not want to have physical photos going back across the border. I had them electronically, but not physically. And many of them were just so excited to have a photo, like a family photo, because if they had them, they left them, right? They fled. So, and they chose 5. And then they told us about them. That was our interview. So our participants, I apologize, this is so small, but get to the right one. We had 3 digital cameras. We only got 1 back, but there's no big deal. I mean, these were pretty dated cameras. But when we recruited, as we played with kids, we were doing bubbles, we were doing sidewalk chalk. We just interacted with those who were waiting, and we'd asked if they would be interested, and then we gave them the camera, or they used their phone, and we made a follow-up appointment. That was a challenge, because some people are still walking 2 hours just from within Nogales to get to Kino border, and then, it's hard to come back. So we were very excited. We had, what's our total number? 11 participants. 2 were from the same family. It was a mother and her 18-year-old son. And if I could make this larger somehow, you would see who they traveled with. So everyone was with a family member, whether it was their own offspring and their spouse, or it was a cousin, or it was grandma, parents, and my little brothers, So the only one that didn't have a physical child with her was 7 months pregnant. So she did have a physical child with her. And they ranged. They were, I think the oldest was probably 38. All were women except for the 18-year-old son, which he gave a very interesting perspective because the threats were against him. And then the cartel was trying to force him into their community, let's call it that, by threatening his little sisters. So we ended up with like 115 photos. I think there were maybe 3 that were blurry, so we threw those out. They were all appropriate. They were either of the environment or their family, individuals, or whatever they were doing, like activities. So the way we analyzed them is, remember, we have our 3rd researcher who did not collect the data, who was a good objective observer, right? So we looked at them and we spread them all out in this particular classroom, and started grouping them. And the nice thing about it was by having Dr. Gibson with us as an objective observer, she was able to challenge our assumptions and our beliefs, because we'd been down there, we were interacting with them, we heard the stories firsthand, and we could be biased. So we worked on that. So the interviews then were translated and transcribed, or transcribed and translated, and we used a content analysis approach, which is really just looking for themes that represents what they told us. We tried to minimize our interpretation, our analysis on it, because it's not about us. Neither one of us are from that population. We've had experience using photo interviewing with Guatemalans. We've done studies, qualitative studies with our students, and so forth. So we each read each transcript 3 times and developed our codes. We looked for that smallest unit of meaning that just kind of described what they were experiencing. And then we came together and we had to negotiate and justify our terms and operationally define them. You know, I might view stress as one way and Jen may view stress as another way, or coping, or faith, or what have you. So once we finalized those code lists, I'm sorry, I should have skipped, sorry. We got 3 things going on. Once we finalized that code list, then we were able to label the sections of the transcript and develop eventually 3 themes. And those are the fleeing, the waiting, and the hoping. And this describes the migrants, or the asylum seekers' experience leading up to and waiting to petition for asylum. And then the way we put it, because these were their photos and IRB did not approve us to use any photos of people that they took, we used the photos to inform and to provide context for the interviews.
So as you notice, we have these 3 themes: fleeing, waiting, and hoping. And when you go and view the small exhibit, you will, in the exhibit room, you will see that on the right-hand wall, you will see the examples of fleeing, waiting, and hoping, with some description of each photo. And then for the most part, what we're going to share with you today are in the waiting, and particularly in waiting and hoping, you will see photos without people that we're able to share with you. So they're not everything we show you today is not the same that you will see in the exhibit itself. For the fleeing category, for the fleeing theme, I would say that it definitely captured descriptions of the journey to the border and what began with the catalyst for fleeing. So what we found was the primary reason that the participants fled and traveled to the border was fear for personal safety and safety for family members. The situations that prompted them to flee included traumatic events such as threats, extortion, and kidnapping. And although some participants reported traumatic events to authorities, the authorities were often described to us as corrupt, or they offered no sense of security. And sometimes they didn't react at all. So we have a few quotes to share for these themes. Our participant Vanessa shared with us, "Where we lived there was a lot of violence, and not only violence and crime, but the police were also cooperating with them. They took my son, and we didn't know where he was, and we went to the police, but the criminals have more protection than we do. They let him go, but they also threatened my daughters, and so you can't live like that. It wasn't a free life, and we were all shut inside all day long. Before I worked, but my children were so afraid that I couldn't work anymore." And so some other traumatic events that were shared with us that prompted fleeing included finding oneself amid violence between 2 cartel groups. So one of our participants described the fact that there were these 2 towns, and there were these different cartel groups that were actually fighting, and their town happened to be in the middle of these 2 groups that were fighting. So the whole town fled. They got up to get ready to go to church one morning, And our participant, Monica, says, when I opened the door, a body was there, cut into pieces. The only thing there were legs, parts of arms, etc. And then when I screamed, my children heard me and they came running. I pushed them inside as best I could, but they had already seen the body. And then my husband went out to report it. I still don't sleep well because of it. The journey to Nogales would be on foot, by bus, by train, or a combination of all three. And the duration that was reported by our participants was between 28 and 35 hours. So Mexico's a lot bigger than maybe you imagine. The journey to the border is long, right? No participant indicated that they had a personal vehicle. Some traveled with immediate family, some with extended family, and some left children and other relatives behind, or left children with other relatives, so left children behind. One family reported stopping in cities along the way to earn enough money to continue the journey north, and throughout the journey they still were concerned for their safety. One of our participants shared this with us. When we arrived in Nogales and when I got off the bus, that was when I asked someone and that person tried to take my baby away. It scared me, but he couldn't take her away because he pulled, but the taxi driver stopped and beeped his horn, and the man couldn't take my baby, but he hurt her arm. Then the taxi driver asked me where I was going, and I told him I wanted to cross. He asked me if my baby was okay because she was crying. I was in danger and I'm young, so he brought me here to Kino Border Initiative. And now we'll go on to waiting.
Mm-hmm. So I don't want to call it the largest theme, but the most information we gathered and the most pictures that you'll see in the art exhibit are from this theme. And that's because that's what our research question was, right? We want to know, what are you doing while you're waiting? So the second theme represents a collective attention to family, community, and the sharing of resources while in Nogales. It also encompassed some of the adjustments that was required of the asylum seekers to adapt to a new culture. No one was fleeing Nogales. Everybody was fleeing other states of Mexico or Guatemala, and the cultures are different. The food is different, so it took some adjustment with that. What we noticed was a solidarity among the asylum seekers because they shared the similar dreams of crossing over and having a safe life for their families, and they tend to unite to share resources and demonstrated compassion for others in the same situation. So if you look at the pictures, what was interesting was the one on the left is a woman in Nogales says, I've got a little bit of my foyer that you can sleep on, and they came. So they are sharing this space closely with other people, so no privacy. It's post-COVID, people are still wearing masks, there's concerns about that, and it's not their home, right? So they also prepare their meals wherever they're staying. And this particular woman had reported she was an excellent cook, loved to cook for her family. And so she's having to prepare her foods, and this is probably food from Kino Border Initiative, on the floor of this little space that they have for safety. Roberto responded, for me, it's interesting how people get to know you, how they share a room, how we share our food. If someone doesn't have anything to eat, we give them something. And if we don't have something, they give it to us. And more than anything, we are united. We have the same dream to go to the U.S. Because they were from different states, they were from Mexico City, Guerrero, and Chihuahua, and Central America, they recognized, again, that food, the dialect of the language, and the culture was different, and it required some adaptations on their own part. They shared how resources were obtained. KBI provided refuge, housing, food, psychological services, and knowledge about the asylum process. And the local community tend to share their own homes with those who were seeking asylum. And one person described it as, It's where this man is helping us. They're talking about a photo. He is helping us because for a week we couldn't find anywhere to sleep. We met him here also at KBI. We met him, and because we spent a week without a place to sleep, and with the rain and the children, we asked a lady to spend the night, and the next day, the next day we went looking for somewhere to stay, but we couldn't find anything. Then we met the name of the person, and thanks to God, he gave us permission to stay with him. He helps the migrants. Additionally, they talked about intense relationship with immediate and extended family members. Their goal was to keep their family together and for them to be safe from harm. Taking family photos was very important with all members present. In fact, many of our participants teared up when they talked about their family photo that they took. And they structure their day around these family activities. This is about survival. This is about keeping kids entertained. This is about making sure kids are fed, making sure kids are safe, and that's where their attention is going as they're waiting. It was nice, and it was hopeful to see that they play games, like even the kids play games with each other from different families. But playing games, reading, just watching the sunset were things they did to kind of distract their children. These two particular places, the one on the left was the second home that they were able to stay in, because the first one somebody kept banging on the door at night and she was fearful. It was a mom and two boys. And the one on the right, it has the one chair, and this is the woman who liked to cook. And when she would cook, they would take turns to sit in the chair, and her kids would always say, "Mama, you teach. You sit. You sit." So another quote from Mariana is, yes, in fact, that is where we eat meals. Yes, it's a little difficult because you leave the place where you live and you have everything you need. Then as you can see, there are not enough chairs to sit to eat. And we always say, like, who will sit? You sit. And then my son always says, no, Mom, you sit because you must be tired after cooking. Then they give me the chair and we eat there. We take turns using the chair. And that's not water. That's the concrete has, I always thought it was water. It's the concrete had broken apart. And then another hopeful activity was diversion, right? So these are 5 little puppies. Thank you. Sorry. Okay. Too many. Because children were not receiving formal education, because of their status in the particular state, the asylum seekers expressed they really enjoyed school and they really enjoyed working, and now they don't have that. So there were often questions about future opportunities for education and work. During free time, they spent time together reading books, engaging in pretend play, and then one family described raising a litter of stray puppies. This is one of the most heartwarming stories. We found a female dog when we arrived. She came to us running, and I told my husband that my mom sent to her so I wouldn't be so sad. Her mom had passed away the year before. We started to feed it, and it stayed with us, and we saw it was pregnant, and it had 5 just like us, thank God. And each one of her children says, this one's mine, because there were 5, and they are going to name them after themselves. So it was a diversion. It was something to care for. It was, everybody likes a puppy, right? So, all right.
Thanks,
next.
Leah. So our third theme is hoping, and it represents the ability to demonstrate positive thoughts, feelings, behaviors in the face of difficult and or traumatic circumstances. Resilience was seen in participants' expressions of hope, optimism, faith in God, gratitude, and determination. The ability to maintain a positive mindset was facilitated by the connections with their family, with other migrants, and also residents of Nogales who helped. Resilience was described as, and Vanessa shared with us, yes, here we have had many experiences, good, bad, and otherwise. But I thank God that He gave us the way we have, and because many people have suffered hunger and don't have anywhere to go, and other problems. We have hope that we say that there will be another life on the other side. We will put up, deal with it, because where we came from, it was worse. And then Sandra shared with us, and the idea is, well, that this helps us to value what we have. I try to see the positive side of a situation. This situation has been difficult. It's not been easy. So these are positive things that we can do. It was also common for participants to find solace in moments of peacefulness or diversion amid all the struggles of just, finding food and finding shelter in their daily lives. So as one interviewee observed her photos, she said, "I took it because it was a peaceful moment." In another case, a participant reflected on positive moments of diversion and the resulting feelings of solidarity. So a few quotes that we have related to this peacefulness and are described by Roberto. He says, "Well, it was fun to see everyone was there playing together. What caught my attention was that they were from all different places, but they were all playing together, they were talking together, hanging out together. They were all united." And then Carlota shares, "We have to find a moment to leave our problems, to look for a way as a family for a distraction to forget our problems and to find a bit of space to smile." And Mariana shared, "Something also I wanted to say is that as a family, we go up each night to the rooftop," and this is the photo of the rooftop, "to sit together and watch the sunset. It's something that comforts us, and if something gives us one hope, it's a sunset. We sit together there and we watch the sunset, and we always say, we finished today, and tomorrow is another day, and it'll be better." Then something we have valued a lot in Nogales are these sunsets. It has comforted us a lot as a family and has helped us see that not everything is bad and that there is always something good. In the next photo, Leah, I wanted to just share this photo. If you can.
The next slide?
The next slide, sorry. Hope and resilience were also apparent in the appreciation and happiness felt by the interviewees as they examined photos taken of their family and their children. And we have two quotes by participants. One, she says, "Yes, this photo is hope. I like this photo because we're all together." And remember, Leah was saying that, that was a treasure for them to actually get their family together, and they took a photo. "I don't know what else to say. I'm happy because my children are obedient." And she even says in this case, they don't take off their mask, not even for the photo. So the photo had them all in a mask. Participants dreamed what to find. Their dream was to find a safe place and a secure place for their families to live. This hope to live free of harm could be a reality through asylum in the U.S. Participants asked us what life was like in the U.S., if it was safe, if there were police providing protection, and if their children could go to school. Participants also explained their belief in goodwill and that good deeds reap benefits in the future. And then one mom shared with us her fortitude. Daniela shared, she said, "Well, this is me, and in life one has to have strength and desire to be firm despite the circumstances. I believe that there are more good people than bad."
So, I still didn't do it, I'm sorry. Our visual model actually has a wall on the right side, and every time I've put it into the slide, it goes away. So that's just my challenge with technology. But so we have our mountains, we have some cacti, we have the wall and rocks, and the journey is the road. But we were looking at the time they're waiting, and that's our bulk of our data. But we also heard the stories of why they're waiting. Why did they flee? And these are just some of the code words, the smallest unit of meaning that fit into these different themes. But that's why we named our presentation and our art exhibit and our manuscript that is under review from fleeing, waiting, and hoping. We were very grateful for the Kino Border Initiative for their willingness to partner with us in doing this project. And one of their caveats was it needs to be a positive light. It's not a woe is me kind of story that you're telling, but please emphasize the strength of these individuals. They are quite strong and resilient and hopeful, and it's all families. So we did not let that bias us, at no means. It really came from the data. These are wonderful people that we should, now I'm just getting on a soapbox, this isn't research, that we should welcome into our U.S. society. Let's just put it that way. So this is kind of our overview, our visual model of what we found out. And then I think Diane has a little bit about the documentary.
So the documentary we filmed at the same time. So while Leah and I were interviewing our 11 participants during the week, between recruiting, helping with the children's activities, and then doing our interviews, Vincent and Philip were in another space, and Kino Border Initiative did recruit volunteers to be filmed for the documentary. And then at one point, Philip, Vincent, and Maria went out into the street, and so you'll see footage of the wall and street views of Nogales.
And it includes staff.
Yes,
interviewed staff.
Exactly. There were thank you. There were interviews by various staff members, psychologists. You'll see an interview with a psychologist. You'll see a lawyer that worked for the Florence Project at the time, and you will see Pedro Velasco. He's the education director, and then finally you'll see Joanna. Joanna Williams, the executive director of Kino Border Initiative. And you will hear testimony from migrants as well. It's only 9 minutes, but we thought it would be a nice way to end the presentation. So let me get this up and running.
Double.
There we go, finally. Sorry, Leah, I am not used to your computer.
I know, here. I got it.
I've got it
I'll
there.
do it with the mouse from
Thank
over
you.
here. Well, maybe. Oh, you're good. Here. So go to film. Yes.
Tengo 18. Apenas no tiene mucho que los cumplí, pues. Sí, vengo con mi mamá, mi papá y mis hermanos y pues yo. Y venimos porque, pues por la seguridad de uno, pues porque pues a mí me secuestraron allá estando en México unos policías. Ahí me golpearon, pues me dejaron tirado y pues me amenazaron que iban a lastimar a mis papás y a mis hermanas y pues corre uno con miedo para venir para acá a ver si nos dan el apoyo de pasarnos porque pues ya no está uno tranquilo estando allá.
Yo soy del país de Guatemala. Pues la verdad, yo intenté cruzar. Traigo a una mi bebé. Tengo mi nena de 2 años. Quise cruzar el desierto, pero pues me agarró la migra. Me dieron mis pertenencias y me subieron a un busito. Y pues cuando yo vi, ya estaba de nuevo aquí en México. Pues no me dieron la oportunidad de irme para allá. La gente sufre, pide a gritos un cambio. La gente lo único que quiere es vivir. La gente lo único que quiere es comer. La gente no quiere matar. La gente no quiere robar. Y a los los tratan como ladrones, como asesinos, cuando no lo somos. En este camino he visto hombres llorando como niños porque el dinero no les alcanza. Los hijos se enferman, la medicina. Y la verdad yo digo, Señor, tanto sufrimiento en esta tierra.
Yo creo que algo único que ofrece la iniciativa Aquí No para la Frontera es que dentro de nuestro trabajo directo con la comunidad migrante a la que servimos, ellos nos confían sus historias, sus vivencias, ¿no? Sus temores, sus expectativas, y esto a nosotros nos da un contexto mucho más real de lo que está haciendo que la gente emigre, lo que está haciendo que la gente venga hacia la frontera buscando que su historia sea escuchada y que se les dé la oportunidad de presentar un caso.
Pues si es tiempo de frío y estoy durmiendo muy cobijadita, pienso en los migrantes que tienen frío, los que están en la calle. Si estoy comiendo algo rico, pienso en la gente que tiene hambre. Este mismo pueblo que viene aquí no todos los días y que se le da comida, pues pasan hambre porque no tienen dinero y algunos solo hacen una comida al día, que es la que se les da aquí, y sufren bastante, inclusive los niños. Porque muchos adultos dicen, bueno, nosotros como quieran aguantamos, pero nuestros hijos sufren bastante.
So oftentimes people come to us because we're their last resort. We have a couple of different groups of migrants who are arriving to Nogales. So there's some people who have tried to cross the border into the United States. They're detained by Border Patrol and they were expelled, sent back to Nogales, Mexico. Some of them are Mexican, some of them are Guatemalan or Honduran. They might come from many different countries, but they're all being sent here. So they come to us for basic services, food, clothing, medical services, and also for orientation and support to understand what could be next or what is next for them. We also have a group of folks who are coming up from southern Mexico or Central America who haven't yet crossed the border, but really interested in seeking protection, so they're fleeing violence and persecution. They are hoping to seek asylum in the United States. And right now the US government hasn't fully opened the asylum process.
Right now we find ourselves in really, really challenging and really unique circumstances. There were a number of very harmful and detrimental policies that came out of the past administration that seemed to specifically target asylum seekers. Folks are universally, if they're fleeing harm, are supposed to have access to asylum no matter how they enter the United States, and they should have access at the ports. That is not the current reality. So we really don't know what the future is for a lot of the migrants we are working with.
La mayoría de los migrantes llegan aquí con problemas de, por lo regular, ansiedad o estrés postraumático. Es algo muy común que veo, yo creo que veo, no sé, unos 4 o 5 casos diarios y se me hace poquito de personas con una ansiedad muy fuerte o que han revivido un trauma que ya tenían. Creo que son personas de las que hay mucho que aprender, que a pesar de tanto dolor que tienen y tantos problemas que cargan, siempre buscan como algo que los mantenga bien o que los mantenga parados para poder seguir luchando.
You know, it can be a challenge, but I think one thing is you have to focus on the small victories, right? And that every time you get a yes, every time you win a case, it might feel small, but every yes is a changed life. Every yes at the port is someone who is not going to be living in danger in the borderlands. Every yes from an immigration judge is a person who has long-term safety.
Ya estando dentro de los Estados Unidos, eso es un triunfo. Yo siento mucha esperanza y tengo fe primeramente en Dios que todo saldrá muy bien.
What's important to remember is that each of us have a role in being that community of welcome, and whether that's advocating for more humane and just policies in the U.S., whether that's being good neighbors to our immigrants in our own community. There's so many different ways that people can become engaged and can become part of this tapestry of welcome and of community and of hospitality. So I'd encourage folks not to think, well, that's good work that they're doing down there, but I would encourage folks to think, what would it mean for me to live out solidarity, and what would it mean for me to be hospitable to my migrant brothers and sisters? So that's really the invitation that I want to leave people with.
Mi animal favorito es el águila. Me gusta de que es así como libre, pues. Así que no tiene barreras para ir a donde quiera y nomás se la pasa en el cielo, en el aire. Siendo libre. Pues es lo que yo quisiera, así, libertad, ¿no? De que nada, así te preocupes, no estar en el cielo volando.
There. So questions that you all have, comments, anything you'd like to share?
That's very interesting.
Thank you.
You don't realize what people are going through unless you really get involved with something like this. It's kind of
Yes.
sad.
And it's not what you see in the news.
No, not at
Is there a question back there?
all.
Yeah, I just noticed that participants that you showed on the screen were all from Mexico.
No, there
Well,
were.
I don't know, not necessarily all the ones, but the ones that were on the screen were from Mexico, I think.
Yes, so
The majority
our
were from
participants-
Guerrero, right?
Yeah, our participants, the majority were from Guerrero. We had 2 from Guatemala, and we had 1 from the state, one from the south, like Zihuatanejo, from the coastal resort town as well.
It just kind of surprised me because I just expected that there were people that were passing through Mexico on their way to the United States. And I'm just wondering what the reaction of the Lopez Obrador's administration would be to know that there are so many people waiting for asylum to get into the United States from his country, you know, where he preaches that he's a president for the people.
Yes, and I will share with you that, so when we did the interviewing in 2021, and then I just came back with from Kino Border Initiative an immersion with Bellarmine Parish again, and yet again the majority of the people that I met were from the state of Guerrero.
And that's where the 2 cartels are fighting, right?
Yes,
Majority.
it's just so in that span of time nothing had changed. That we were still seeing people fleeing from that state. So there's a lot of violence there.
So it said in the documentary that it takes around 2 years for the asylum seeker to even be processed in the first place. So like when it does come up to those 2 years, like what even happens afterwards when it basically starts the process?
Well, I can tell you that the family that you see on the screen has been waiting for 5 years, and there are hearings, but the hearings, last maybe at the most a couple of hours, and then they get, another court date. But the court is so backed up that it's about 6 months then to the next hearing. So.
And hopefully they don't end up in detention.
Well, they were actually in detention first, but yes, I see what you're saying. Yes, that in the end they would get denied. You mean, and then they would get deported, which is a possibility.
And just as a reminder, we do have a detention facility here in Buffalo that processes people, many of them from the southern border.
I just think this is such a powerful message, so thank you both, and thank you, Richard, for organizing this. I recently returned from El Salvador, and so my experience there was that I met so many people in really difficult situations that still retained this element of hope. And so I really respect and appreciate that you focused on that, because it's just about the power of our humanity. And regardless of our situations, we always share similar emotions, right? And beliefs. So thank you for your good work, and it helps to remind me to be a better person and to focus on what is possible, rather than falling into this state of desolation and hopelessness.
And if I can make a plug, Joanna's last words were, "What can I do?" Right? And there's plenty to do here in Buffalo. Justice for Migrant Families, who I partner with, organizes, and my students can testify to this. Accompaniment visits to Batavia Detention Center. 2 of them are here who have done this already, although they were denied yesterday. But and there's different activities that you can do locally. We also have campus ministry that does a partnership with KBI. We also have the opportunity for community members to volunteer with KBI, as well as students can get credits if you go for a month. It counts as a study abroad, internship, service, hybrid. Faculty, if you are interested, and I know Diane is actually interested in this as well, we have immigration simulation thing that I've developed that can be both delivered virtually in Spanish or in English. I'm willing to train more people. I need help, so I am willing to train more people. Spencer's done it with me, and Nancy's done it with me, so thank you for that.
That's great.
So there's plenty of local opportunities. I would also encourage you to check out the Borders Immigrations Initiative webpage, from which you can access our teaching portfolio, which gives you lots of resources, including, and our YouTube channel, which has talks about updates to the legal process from former students of mine who are now immigration lawyers. So there's lots of resources that you can educate yourself about as well. And within our Jesuit network, we have these collaborative things, so there's plenty of opportunities.
And I think that one of the biggest things, thanks Richard for sharing all that, is to really, think about Joanna's invitation, and that we're all called to advocacy. You've heard some stories today. Now that you've heard them, it is really our responsibility to continue to share those stories and those testimonials, so that they don't just stay within us, right? So you have access to the exhibit. You can invite your friends, your colleagues, your peers to the exhibit. In the exhibit, there's a QR code to the documentary, so you can share that broadly. And then, as Richard said, there are plenty of opportunities right here in Buffalo and right here on your campus to work on advocacy and just sharing this story.
Well, thank you both for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. I have a little gift if you want one. says is a bilingual, look, see, English, Spanish.
Ooh.
It's printed by KBI, so feel free to take one of those. So thank you to both of you.
Oh, that's so nice.
It's a little local specialty, which I didn't know about till I moved here.
Oh my gosh, thank you.
And Kenesha's t-shirt, so you can brag about Kenesha.
Awesome. Thank you, Richard.
Even though it says college on it, I don't have new ones that say university on it, so sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for
We're gonna
coming.
get new ones that say university.